Welcome to the Unit 1 Day 1 video in Algebra 1. Thanks for logging in. I hope that you have your note packet in front of you. Our video today is going to be on pages 2 through 5 on your note packet today. And so make sure that you're filling the note packet in as I go with your own notes. And once you're done, below the video there should be a button that says Start New Attempt. Make sure that you click on that and write the summary online in Schoology and submit it along with any questions or comments that you have. This will be your grade for homework. Our goal today is to evaluate variable expressions, understand the mathematical meaning of verbal phrases, and use verbal phrases to write variable expressions. Now you might not know what that means, but I'll make sure to explain as we go. So blue whales, for example, during their feeding season will eat about 4 tons of food every day, which is almost as much as how much I eat, but not quite as much. But if you wanted to figure out, for example, how much food a blue whale ate during a particular day or after so many days, you would just take the number of days it's been and multiply by 4. So for example, on the first day, he ate or she ate 4 tons of food. So to find out the total number of food eaten, you'd multiply 4 times 1 day. 4 tons of food every 1 day. For 2 days, of course, it'd be 4 times 2 because now there are 2 days in which the blue whale was eating. And after 10 days, you just multiply 4 times 10. And of course, you hopefully see a pattern now between the number of days that it's been and how many tons of food have been eaten by the blue whale. It's just the same pattern every time. I will multiply whatever day it is or however many days it's been by 4, and that's how many tons of food the blue whale will eat. So this letter D represents just some day. We don't know how many days it's been, but it's just going to be some value that I don't know yet. Of course, when I decide to give it a value, then it will just be a number. For right now, that is a variable. And I'm sure that some of you already are aware of what a variable is. It is a number that we don't know the value to. But we'll make sure that in these videos that we define important terms or things that you may or may not know about. For example, our goal was to evaluate variable expressions, but you probably need to know what a variable expression is in order to evaluate it. You probably need to know what evaluate means too. So we're going to talk about what that means. A numerical expression is just numbers connected with an operation. So numbers and, that's an and sign. When I write that, that's the word and. Numbers and operations. Now operations are the 4 operations that we use with numbers so far. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And there are other operations as well that we will use, but those are the 4 that we normally use: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. A variable is a number represented, which means to take the place of, by a letter whose value is unknown. Okay, so for example, the variable in this expression is D because it stands for some number. It definitely is a number, but I just don't know what the value is. A numerical expression might be this right here, 4 times 1. There are 2 numbers connected with the operation of multiplication. Finally, a variable expression is just like a numerical expression, except it contains numbers, variables, which is the new part. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Let me fix that. Variables and operations. An example of a variable expression is this entire sentence here. I call it a sentence. It's a mathematical expression, 4 times D, where D is the variable, 4 is the number, and the dot represents multiplication. Now you might have seen multiplication written as an X, but we're going to use X as a variable. So we don't use X's anymore for multiplication. I'm going to be using dots. Finally, evaluate means to substitute replace is another synonym or a word that means the same thing as substitute. Substitute or replace a variable with a value, and then we will simplify, which means just to actually perform operations. So for example, in our last slide, or 2 slides ago, we talked about how much food a whale would eat. We used the expression 4 multiplied by d, where d is the number of days. Now that we know what the word evaluate means, it means to replace a variable with a number, or substitute a variable with a value, and then simplify the expression. I want to evaluate the expression, and we know what expression means now. That's this whole thing. I want to evaluate 4 times d when d is 120 to find out about how many tons of food a blue whale eats in a feeding season. About that, we had an announcement come on while I was recording. I want to evaluate the expression 4 times d when d is 120 to find out about how many tons of food a blue whale eats in a feeding season of 120 days. All right, well, we first need to write down the expression that I have, 4 multiplied by d. And again, it asks us to evaluate, which means to replace the variable, which is d, with a value, which they say d should be equal to 120. The equal sign implies that d and 120 are the same value. So I'm going to just rewrite my expression now, but instead of writing d, I'm going to write the number 120. After I multiply it together, 4 times 120 is 480. Now think about what this answer means. 480 what? Well, 4 times d was how many tons of food a blue whale eats in a feeding season of d days. Now we say it's 120 days, so 480 represents the tons of food eaten in 120 days. And that's what it means to evaluate a variable expression. We took the expression I had, replaced the variable with a value, in this case 120, and then complete by multiplying or performing any other operation. Let's do a couple examples now. It says to evaluate the expression when x is equal to 10 and y is equal to 4. So for example, x plus y is a variable expression where x and y are variables. My operation is a plus sign. Now notice I don't have any numbers in here, I just have variables. That's okay, it's still a variable expression. Even if it doesn't contain any numbers in it, it still counts as a variable expression if there are variables and operations. Now it says to evaluate, that means I need to replace any variable with a value of a number. So x should be replaced by 10 because that's what the value was in the problem. And the variable y needs to replace with 4 because that's the value that was given to us in the instructions. Then I add them together because that's what the operation was. 10 plus 4 is 14. And that is my answer when I evaluate x plus y when x is 10 and y is 4. You'll notice over on the right side in part B that I have x, y with nothing in between it. They're just kind of saddled up next to each other. What that means is that I am multiplying. So really I can rewrite this expression as x multiplied by y. You'll see that often in algebra is that when we want to multiply, we don't write that multiplication sign sometimes because we're lazy and it just takes more time to write the dot. Instead, I will just write xy, but I need to evaluate, which means to replace the value of the variable with a value of a number. So 10 is x, 4 is y, and it asks me to multiply them. 10 times 4, of course, is 40. Now I've evaluated the expression x times y when x is 10 and y is 4. A verbal model, well, let's think about what a verbal model might be. What does the word verbal mean? It means to speak, right? It means that somebody is talking to you. They're saying something. So there's going to be some words, right? So verbal means to speak, a model means to represent or to show. So that's what that word means, right? So words show. That's pretty much what I want you to think of when I think of verbal model. Words will show you what to do. So mathematically, the definition of a verbal model is using words to write expressions. Now, there are some words that indicate what you need to do with operations. For example, the word plus, 5 plus 2, that means I need to add. The sum of 5 and 2 would mean to add. 5 is increased by 2, means to add, and so on. I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see that certain words represent certain operations. A couple more examples before I start. Minus, difference of, decreased by, fewer than, all means subtraction. Times, the product of, multiplied by, of, usually means multiplication. But order is important. Do you see on the right side of our notes on this page? Order is important, especially in subtraction and division. The difference of a number and 7 means n minus 7. Notice that they used the letter n for a number, okay, and the word difference implied subtraction. And of course, 7 is represented by the 7. But I don't do 7 minus 7. The order is important on subtraction. Because if you think about it, if I did 5, oops, that's not a pencil. I did 5 minus 2, that's 3. But 2 minus 5 is a negative 3. I get different answers if I have it in a different order. So that's important to pay attention to. Our final problem on the video today involves baseball. You plan to divide 120 players in a baseball league into teams with the same number of players. Use a verbal model to write a variable expression for the number of teams if you know the number of players in each team. Okay, for example, if I know the number of players per team, I'm going to let that be P. It doesn't say anywhere in this problem how many players are on a team. So that's going to be our value P. Well, in order to figure out how many teams there are, that would be equal to however many players we have divided by how many players are on a team. So my variable expression would be 120 divided by the number of players per team. Let's give an example just to help make sense of this. Let's say that we wanted P. Let's evaluate P to be, I don't know, 10. Let's say there are 10 players on a team. So if there are 120 players and each team has 10 players, that means there are 12 teams. So that's how this expression works. I took 120 players divided by how many players there should be on how many teams, or on each team, excuse me, and that's how I get how many teams there are. Okay? Now be careful. There's one other thing I want to mention before we finish up here. When you write a variable expression involving division, we don't use that division symbol with the 2 dots. We just write it as a fraction. So that's why I wrote 120 over P. All right, that's the end of the first video. Again, make sure at the bottom to click Start New Attempt. Write a short summary of 1 or 2 sentences of what you've learned. Make sure to use vocabulary in the video, and I will give you feedback on your summaries based on what I expect and what you wrote. This is part of your homework grade and is very important so that you can succeed in class. So please write your summaries, write any comments you have, and we'll talk about the video tomorrow. Thank you.